The Basin and Range ecosystem of Nevada is a rugged expanse of isolated mountain ranges and wide arid valleys. These mountains rise sharply from dry basins, creating a landscape of contrast between jagged peaks and vast open lowlands. Sagebrush and saltbush blanket the valleys, while pinyon pine and juniper cling to the higher slopes. Each species found here adapted to extreme conditions. Wildlife have survived and even thrived in this harsh environment through resilience and adaptation, along with a little bit of luck. The Lahontan cutthroat trout, otherwise known as LCT, once a top predator in Nevada's ancient lake Lahontan. At one time, one of the largest lakes in North America, is a true survivor. As the lake dried up around 7000 BC, the trout managed to adjust, thriving in both high mountain streams and isolated desert rivers. Known for the red-orange streak along its jaw, LCT can reach impressive sizes in ideal conditions, with reports of fish weighing over 60 pounds during the mining days, making it the largest inland trout species. LCT are an important first food of the northern Paiute, who once heavily relied on their wild abundance before Western colonization. European settlers in the 19th century brought overfishing, dam construction, dewatering, mining, and the grazing of domestic livestock, sending fish stocks plummeting. The trout, first listed under the Endangered Species Act in 1970, occupies just 12% of its historic range in Nevada, California, and Oregon. On public lands in Nevada, where the majority of remaining habitat can be found, habitat conditions are in dire straits, most significantly impacted by historic and ongoing cattle grazing. Roughly 80% of the state of Nevada is federal land, owned and managed in trust for the American people by the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service. The vast majority of these lands are grazed by cattle and sheep. A recent 5-year status review by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service found Lahontan cutthroat trout populations in deep trouble, with only 5 out of 71 populations categorized as being resilient. The Bureau of Land Management's land health standards are guidelines designed to help ensure the sustainability and ecological health of the public lands grazing program. These standards focus on maintaining the hydrologic and ecological function of upland and riparian areas, preserving water quality, and providing suitable habitat for sensitive species. Only 7% of the stream length in LCT habitat fall within grazing allotments that meet these standards across their range. This is a truly astounding figure. More than 400 kilometers of occupied streams pass through grazing allotments failing to meet standards due to current livestock grazing. In Nevada, 63% of grazing allotments that contain LCT habitat are failing land health standards. Cattle grazing along streams severely harm these delicate ecosystems, with significant impacts on trout populations. As cattle trample stream banks, they erode soil, widen the streams, and introduce sediment that clouds the water. This sediment settles over gravel beds, obstructing oxygen flow to eggs and young fish. Grazing also reduces streamside vegetation, which normally provides essential shade to keep water temperatures cool, a necessity for trout, which are highly sensitive to heat. Without this vegetation, water temperatures can rise to levels that stress or even kill trout. Cattle excrement adds excess nutrients, promoting algae blooms and depleting oxygen, which further degrades the habitat. Together, these changes disrupt the trout's life cycle, leading to declining populations and even local extinction in heavily affected stream systems. We're on Hanks Creek, a tributary to the Marys River, and you can see the stark contrast. This is an active grazing allotment, and their cattle are authorized to be here right into the creek. So this is Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat, and the cattle grazing here is making their lives really untenable. The grass is grazed down to a nub, and we've got the banks are sheared off. There's no willows around. We should have beaver here holding back the water, creating trout habitat. This is some of the worst looking habitat you'll find in the state, but there's plenty of other places that look very similar to this. And this really represents an important restoration opportunity. If we can get the cows out of here, start replanting willow, and encourage beaver to move back, this could once again be prime Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat.
So we call this electrofishing. This is how we stream survey so we can find Lahontan cutthroat trout. Right here we have perfect example of some good habitat. We have a nice undercut bank for them to hide in. These stream surveys are important for us to do so we have a good idea of what's going on with the populations out here. We're able to see how they trend from year to year. Right here, we're looking at a pretty pristine LCT stream. If we were on a stream full of heavy grazing, this would look completely different. Our LCT wouldn't be doing as good because they need cold, clean water in order to survive. LCT are very important in this river because this is their natural range. LCT were historically here. One of the biggest threats to LCT has to be the lack of regulation on the grazing. So the fact that there's pretty minimal grazing on the Marys River really helps. It allows us to have this cold, clean water. So this right here is Lahontan cutthroat trout. Pretty small, relatively good size for where we are. Love the coloration they got going on. I think they're pretty unique for a trout.
In 1999, the Bureau of Land Management did something remarkable. They acquired 47,000 acres in the Marys River watershed near the Jarbidge Wilderness in Nevada through a land exchange. The Marys River Exclosure was set aside specifically to protect the trout, with 55 miles of prime stream habitat. No cattle are allowed to graze here. Other species are benefiting as well from the many decades of recovering habitat, such as moose, mule deer, antelope, and the sage grouse. The ecological recovery here on the Marys River is a remarkable story, one that should continue to inspire, including the Bureau itself, who now find themselves with low morale among the rank and file, with employee satisfaction in the dumps, according to a 2021 study by the Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. In fall 2024, Western Watersheds Project visited the Marys River Exclosure to film. We wanted to show you what the recovery from cattle grazing looks like. When I'm searching out rivers to fish, I'm specifically choosing ones that do not have much cattle impact. And this is still in good shape. These beaver dams create excellent trout habitat. And as I walk through the pool, it actually gets colder, and these trout really like the cold water. It spreads the water out, reconnects the floodplains, and it creates these side channels where small fish, the fry, like to rear. These are really important structures, but also beavers and Lahontan cutthroat trout co-evolve together, so they both serve each other and their life's needs. So when there's cattle present, they eat all the willows and all of this vegetation that would otherwise be used for building beaver dams. And when that's gone, then the beavers have to leave an area. Where we want to recover Lahontan cutthroat trout, we also want to promote and protect beavers as well. Well, some cattle got in here. You can see this just kind of got mowed down a bit. Unfortunately, they're not supposed to be in here right now, but you can see the cattle hoof prints here. So you can see, because the cows got in here, they chewed down this grass. It's really important for insects and to stabilize the banks, but also it's a source and a home for trout food. These effects really compound, and you can just notice them in different parts of the landscape. So I'm really bummed out, because I was hoping to see some nice tall riparian grasses here that I could show you as a part of this recovery, but maybe they'll come back next year. The weight of the cows crushes the bank, it falls off into the river, and it just continues the cycle of bank shearing. Making sure the cows stay out of this place so it can recover is really important, otherwise we're just not going to see that full recovery. So it took like 3 decades to get us to this point, and we just can't go back in the other direction, and that's where it's heading right now if these cows continue to come in and graze this area. But nature is super resilient. We just have to give her some space to heal and do her thing. When I come here and see this trespass, I just lose so much faith in the Bureau of Land Management to protect places like the Marys River that we've already set aside, and how can this agency be trusted to protect additional areas? So I'm really deeply concerned and quite disturbed right now, honestly, and I hope that things can turn around fast. The oldest official fossil records put the trout at over 10 million years old. LCT survived the tumultuous mid-Pliocene, where average temperatures reached 2 to 4 degrees Celsius warmer than today's climate. After many millions of years of existence, agriculture and ranching could cause the ultimate demise of the species. A little further down on the Marys River inside the exclosure, the creek here is it's quite shallow, and that's because we don't have beaver dams right here, and I don't see any fish off this ledge, so it just really speaks to how important and vital these beaver dam complexes are for the trout's habitat. Oh, there are some nice holes in here. There aren't any beaver dams in this section, but there's some nice deep runs and older beaver dams and some root balls that should definitely be holding some trout. And with all this sign of cattle through here, I just can't help but think that they've just chased them out. They're really finicky fish. I was up and down the Marys River last year, and I saw moose sign everywhere. And this year I haven't seen any moose poop or any sign of the animals around. I think the cows just completely chased them out of this habitat. Those who care about healthy wildlife habitat on public lands, like hunters and anglers, would benefit tremendously from more areas retired from domestic livestock grazing. The Bureau of Land Management State Office in Nevada is currently evaluating livestock management across 38 grazing allotments that contain LCT habitat. If public lands livestock grazing is not reformed in Nevada soon, the trout is threatened with extinction. Please take a moment and email the Bureau and ask that key grazing allotments be retired and more land exchanges explored to benefit the trout.